That's right, we are back for Central City Rewatch. Do apologize for being gone so long. Just health, life, and other stuff got in the way, but we are back. Hopefully we don't take another unexpected break. This week, we're back reviewing The Flash, and today we're on episode 14. This episode capped off a two-part story arc focused on Firestorm. As we quickly discovered, separating Ronnie and Professor Stein was only the beginning of the problem. The real challenge was fending off the persistent General Eiling, a soldier who wanted nothing more than to fire the first salvo in the coming superhuman arms race. Even if this episode sometimes came across more as a backdoor pilot for a Firestorm spinoff than an actual Flash episode, it was definitely an entertaining watch. Unlike last week's The Nuclear Man, or not last week, but you know what I mean, this episode showcased a lot more of Ronnie and Stein in their individual forms. That led to some emotional, satisfying reunion scenes. Caitlin finally had her fiancé back in mind, as well as body, ending months of pain and loss. Mrs. Stein, meanwhile, found herself greeted by a husband with a newfound appreciation for both their marriage and pizza. So win-win. The Caitlin-Ronnie material really anchored this episode. Even though Caitlin achieved the one goal she wanted in the aftermath of the particle accelerator disaster, having Ronnie back in her life didn't immediately solve everything. In some ways, it only created new problems. The scene where Ronnie tried to convince her to move away from Central City and start over was especially telling. Despite herself, Caitlin has moved on since his quote-unquote death. She has new friendships and new purpose, and maybe there isn't as much room in her life for this old romance as she expected. At the same time, the emotion was palpable as Ronnie rushed to aid Barry in rescuing Stein, and Caitlin struggled with the idea of losing him all over again. There was a lot of complex material for Danielle Panabaker to wrestle with this week, and she handled it well. As for Eiling, there clearly wasn't much desire to cast him as a three-dimensional villain. His motivations were clear but basic. He's your obligatory military man who wants to exploit the growing superhuman population for his own ends. And he's clearly not above torture and murder to further those ends. Clancy Brown definitely fits the bill. Brown plays a villain as a fearsome character, practically oozing with venom, but it didn't exactly push the actor beyond his normal range. Eiling has been a fairly limited character in his few appearances so far, and I'm not convinced that that's ever going to change. For all we know, he didn't even survive his encounter with Grodd in the final scene. But if nothing else, Eiling and his troops made good cannon fodder for the Flash and Firestorm. Their brief team-up was a joy to watch. Sure, we've already seen Barry join forces with the Arrow this season, but there's something to be said for a superhero team-up when both heroes are truly superhuman. That shot of Flash and Firestorm racing away from the military base was real, the brave and the bold caliber stuff. I only wish Firestorm had demonstrated his transmutational powers rather than relying on the now familiar flight and fire. But to be fair, it's not as if Ronnie and Stein have had much practice yet. Barry's own struggles definitely took a backseat this week. Still, there is some compelling material at play, as Barry wrestled with the idea that he'll one day face off with the Reverse Flash again and fail to save his mother's life. I really enjoyed the direction the writers took with this plot point. I've mentioned in other episodes the danger this show faces in sticking too close to the formula laid out by the Flash Rebirth comic. This show needs to remain unpredictable for hardcore comic fans, as well as casual viewers. Luckily, it doesn't appear as though the show is simply going through the familiar motions in this area. It's really intriguing to see Barry using this newfound evidence as a way to prepare for his rematch. What if this becomes the key to victory in his battle against Reverse Flash? What if he actually does succeed in rewriting the past? What kind of a world will he come back to at that point? Could the writers be setting up Season 2 as some sort of extended take on the Flashpoint storyline? That could be really cool, especially if it carried over to Arrow. There were various other little moments that made this episode stand out. I enjoyed the bits of comedic relief that Joe and Cisco provided, as all the characters struggled to wrap their heads around the increasingly bizarre developments in their lives. Cisco breaking down all the time travel chatter in terms of famous movies was pretty amusing. Even better was the shot of Joe nonchalantly reacting to the idea of a dead man walking into his living room by handing him a beer. The Iris subplot was a little less successful, however. It's definitely interesting to see her enter the investigative reporter mode and possibly become an antagonist to Barry and his friends. The issue is more that her scenes felt like an afterthought compared to everything else at play this week. Hopefully, with Firestorm out of the picture for now, the writers will be able to devote a little more time to Iris and her role in the growing conflict on this show. Finally, I'd be remiss in not mentioning the final scene more directly. Barry apparently remains unconcerned about the continued threat posed by Eiling, even after stupidly unmasking in front of the General earlier this season and paying the price this week. Lucky for him, Wells is a little more proactive. It was an unexpected surprise to see Wells suit up and abduct Eiling, even unmasking while in costume for the first time. It was an even greater surprise to see what he had in store for his nemesis. What a great little introduction for Grodd that was. Yes, I know it's not the first time he's been glimpsed. The CG effects for Grodd are surprisingly convincing. The way his voice is depicted is terrific. That line, not God, Grodd, may well be my favorite moment of the entire season, and I can't wait for this villain to take center stage. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below of what you thought episode 14 of The Flash, season 1. And of course, as always, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/cinemagold. And with that, thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time.